I have ridiculous monkey-like arms. For the jerk, I've slightly widened my grip and I'm working on overhead strength and stability. Any other advice? Focus on really getting back, knee bent and low. So in regards to the jerk, the problem is the wider we go, obviously, the more stability we need overhead, and generally the more pressure this will put on our shoulders, elbows, and potentially wrists, which as a slightly older lifter isn't really something we want to do. Now, there is some benefits, obviously, to a wider jerk because we get a shorter difference overhead, so time to lockout is better, but generally separation speed from the shoulder is slower. So in general, we're not a fan of doing that. The length of the arms isn't that important in regards to the jerk because it's such a fast lift. The length of the arms isn't really the variable at play. It's technique, power, strength available to you, positions you're hitting, how consistent you're doing it, and how you're using them in the lift. So the arm length actually in the jerk specifically isn't something that really benefits from the wider grip because there's more downsides and positives. And you actually need, it's slightly harder to hold those positions with that wider grip if you've gone very, very wide. Now, we're assuming here, obviously, that you've gone very wide, like we're talking on rings or wider, your pinky fingers on the rings or something. In general, just outside shoulder width is best for pretty much everyone. And you can see there's a variety of different lifters with very long, very short arms with essentially the exact same grip width. And that's for those reasons, is that the arms are the least important variable here realistically. And we're not a fan of it in terms of shoulder position because it often leads to more issues. You might get a short-term bump, but very often people have a very poor ability to drive aggressively from the shoulder. It does feel okay overhead because it feels like it's a shorter distance, but oftentimes people lose a lot of stability with that rider rack position, and people don't really have the capacity to build that stability like someone like Jason Lopez might have. And you can see how often he misses jerks that he should be making. You know, he'll clean something like it's 120 kilos, and then he'll miss a jerk where you're like, holy shit, or recover. But then other times then he'll nail it. It's because that stability becomes so kind of erratic when you get to that wider grip that we're just not a fan of it. But there's other areas at play there, which I can be sure you're making.
There's just one last thing on the latter half of your question. You said focus on really keeping the back knee bent and low. You definitely want to have a bend in your back knee, like 10 to 15 degrees of a knee bend is pretty much ideal. But you should not be focusing on getting your knee low to the floor. Generally speaking, in the split jerk position, we want to focus on keeping our hips as high as possible in the catch, keeping that hip significantly above the line of our front leg, making sure this line on the front leg is never close to horizontal. And when we try and focus on getting that back knee more bent and closer to the floor, tends to cause us issues because the hips will sink and we'll be less stable in the catch.